Welcome back, artists. This week we're going to be doing an illustration in the style of the artist Jen Aranyi. So we're going to be doing winter landscapes. And I'm going to show you how to shade the mountains and add pine trees. And then I'm going to show you a couple different shapes too. You can do a regular kind, or she does a lot in shapes like in the bottle, and I'm going to show you one in a circle. So for this one, it's going to be mostly drawing. Get your pencil, a regular size black marker, like a regular Sharpie, and then a skinny Sharpie or a regular ballpoint pen, and then watercolor paint for the top. Or if you don't have watercolor paint, you can use Crayola markers. I'll show you that method. And then if you want to add like some stars in the sky, you can do salt on top of the watercolor, or I have a white gel pen. You could also go over top with white paint when you're finished with that. All right, let's get started on these winter landscapes inspired by Jen Aranyi. Okay, artists, to get started on the drawing portion of your project, you're gonna need a white piece of paper and then your Sharpies and a pencil. You have to use a Sharpie since we're gonna be painting over this. If we use a regular Crayola marker, it will bleed everywhere. So you'll need a permanent marker and a pencil for that. Then for the top sky, you're gonna either need watercolor paint or Crayola markers, and then a paintbrush and water. If you're wanting to add stars at the end, you can get, if you have a white gel pen or like a white, maybe like a metallic Sharpie, or if you're using the watercolor paint, you can use salt to sprinkle over top, which will dry and kind of look like star clumps when it's finished. Okay, go ahead and grab your paper, and you're gonna go over it in pencil first, but I'm gonna use my big Sharpie. I've already outlined my drawing before we start. So I'm gonna grab my Sharpie, and you guys remember the first thing you need in your landscape is a horizon line. So your horizon line goes horizontal across your whole paper, and that's gonna be where your eye sees the ground and the sky meeting. So go ahead and put a horizon line going across all of it. So this is gonna represent the ground, and this the sky, and the mountains are gonna go into the sky portion because they're so tall they stand up off the ground. Okay, on the foreground, the front, we're gonna add some layers to make it look like hills of snow. So I'm going to add 2 hills in the very front. I'm gonna add another middle ground kind of horizon line going. And then off in the distance, I'm gonna add a little short line going through the back. Okay, the next step I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add my trees. So since we're doing the mountains, I'm gonna do kind of pine tree looking trees. So in the front, we're gonna make them very big, and then we're gonna have them get very small as they go back, just like we do when we're drawing things to make them look like they go back far away. We have them big to small. So I'm gonna start in the very front. I'm gonna make a big one. So I want you to put a little line at the top of the tree, and then we're gonna come out and getting wider and wider as we go down to the bottom of the paper. And I'm just going back and forth. These can look kind of messy for your pine trees. And then if you want, you can add a little stump, or you don't have to. Okay, over here I'm gonna make a little bit smaller one. So I'm gonna make a line where I did that middle ground line. And you can even come down like triangles like this, kind of making a triangle shape at the top. Okay, next I'm gonna go back to the second line. I'm gonna do 2 trees, a little bit smaller since we're starting to get further back. And then I'm gonna go back here and make little bitty ones. This one you can just kind of make like a fuzzy triangle. And then back on the horizon line, I'm gonna put some small trees as well. Okay, next up, let's go ahead and outline our mountains. So you're gonna go across your paper and make hills and triangular peaks. Similar way you usually do mountains, but I'm gonna show you how to go ahead and shade in over it. Okay, so now I'm gonna switch to my skinnier marker because we're gonna start doing the shading. So if you have a ballpoint pen or a skinny Sharpie, you can grab that. And how we're gonna make the shading on the sides of the mountain is we're going to start in the middle of the peak, come down and go up, almost making a triangle cutout from the side. So I'm gonna start in the middle of the peak, come down, and then go up to the corner. And I'll show you again. So down from the middle of the peak, up the corner, down and up, down and up. And then I'm also gonna add some abstract shapes, so kind of like blobs. And this is gonna look like snow resting on the face of the mountain. Okay, I'm also gonna add a couple of vertical lines, and this is just gonna help the eye make it look like the mountain is going up. So you can kind of add some of these lines coming down for shading. And then next we're gonna use lines to shade in the side of the mountains. So I'm gonna make diagonal lines close together to shade in the sides of these. Okay, and then I'm gonna add some skinnier lines in between the lines I made. So this is why you do need a ballpoint pen or a skinnier marker. And that's gonna give it a little bit of a darker shaded look. Okay, I'm gonna use a similar technique, lines going the same direction on the spots we added onto the mountain. And this time you can just draw them close together. Okay, so now we have the shaded portion done of these. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab my watercolor paints. And this one I'm gonna show you with watercolor paint and salt. The next example I'm gonna show you using the Crayola markers and the gel pen. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do some dark colors to make it look like a night sky. So I'm gonna go on top with some blue. And I'm gonna blend purple and light blue till I go down to the horizon line. All right, I have my dark purple at the top. I'm gonna add some blue in. I'm gonna fade down to just blue. And then I want the blue to get lighter as I go down, so I'm just gonna add more water to make it a light blue. Okay, I'm gonna go back up and darken my sky a little bit. Okay, while you have some wet paint on there, if you're doing the salt method, you can get a little handful of table salt and you're gonna sprinkle that onto the wet paint and just let it dry. So kind of give an even coat. You can hopefully see it where it's starting to pool around the paint or the salt. And you do need to be pretty wet for the salt to stick and give the effect, so make sure you have some puddled water there. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and set this one aside, and then I'm gonna start on the next example, and I'll show you that one again when it's dry. Okay, so for this one, I showed you in the sample, I had made a bottle, like a message in a bottle, and this one I did a little camping scene on, if you can see the little tent. So I'm gonna show you one on a little circle cutout. And this is just gonna be a really simple, fast one that you can do. So again, we're gonna start with our horizon line. So I'm gonna go with the Sharpie. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add some lines in the foreground and add some trees. So again, I'm gonna do my little triangle trees. I'm gonna make a big one in the center. I'm gonna do this one by starting a line going down the middle and then adding my tree branches going off of it. I'm gonna show a little bit more detail since it's close up. Okay, and then a medium one. And then maybe I'll do a tall one here. Okay, go ahead and outline your mountain scene again. So remember, we're gonna do wiggly lines and peaks. I'm gonna switch to the skinny marker and then again show the sides of the mountains. So I'm gonna start at the peak and go wiggly and up. And then shade those in with my diagonal lines. Okay, and then same as before, this time I'm gonna add just some diagonal lines going down the mountain. Little wiggly lines for some detail. Okay, on this one, instead of using watercolor paint, I'm gonna color it in with Crayola markers and then paint over those. So this is an alternative. If you don't have watercolors, you can do this, but make sure they're water-based. Same reason why we use Sharpie to do the bottom. If we are using a permanent marker, it's not going to bleed, and this time we actually do want it to bleed to give a watercolor effect. So I'm gonna start with my dark and I'm gonna fade to light. So I'm gonna do blue next. And then down to pink. Okay, go ahead and let that dry a minute. And then grab your paintbrush and you wanna dip it in water, but unlike the watercolor paint, you don't want it super wet because that's gonna make it bleed a lot. So just get it a little damp and then you can run your brush over top of the marker until we get a blend. While mine is still drying, I'm gonna show you adding the stars on with the white gel pen. So I'm gonna use my bottle example I had from earlier. And you're just gonna add white dots all over the sky to make it look like stars going over. All right, I hope you guys had fun making these Jen Aranyi landscapes. If you want to send us a picture of what you're working on, we'd love to see. And I'll see you guys again next week. Bye.